Hello, my name is Frances Fox. I'm a trained government remote viewer. I was in a secret program looking to augment human potential, looking for superpowers. It was a mind control program. Um, I chose before I incarnated to be born into that program. I didn't choose to be born on a mountain in Tibet or in a cave in the mountains in Colombia. I chose to be born in a modern society. Um, but to have the benefits of ancient wisdom. And in order for that to happen, coincidentally, the US military sent me to live in Tibet with a Bon, B-O-N, master. Bon are the shamans in Tibet and in Mongolia that were there since the beginning of time, it would appear, before Buddhism. And they are totally into magic. What does that mean? Magic is the creating of reality with your mind. And rather than calling it miracles, which just seem to happen out of no place and is usually not in control of the person creating the miracle, magic is repeatable miracles. And that is what I came to teach: white magic, repeatable miracles. And I am well on my way. I'm very pleased with where I'm at in terms of my personal process. As soon as the United States can be a safe place for people like me, which I think will be very, very soon. But anyway, today we're going to start with me remembering what it was like when I first came out and started talking about what I was involved in. My family was not aware. Um, it was a shock to all my friends. I mean, when they hold a gun to your head and say they're going to shoot your little sister when you're young and that they're going to kill your kids when you get older, you just kind of become really obedient. But when I started to work with people personally, and at that time, people were still very into sex. Huh, can you imagine an instinct? They were still very instinctive. And of course, a lot of the questions that I got was from girls, women, and asking about their guy or the guy they wanted to be with or whatever. And also, a lot of people were renegotiating their relationships, which happens all the time. And I remember that it reached a point where I realized that I needed to tell people that they had to allow people their response to their changes. You can't just come in and completely change everything in a marriage, in a relationship, in a business without there being an emotional reaction for people who like the way things were or just don't like change. And I think I'm going to have to remind this country that we need to allow people their reaction to all of the what I consider the wonderful changes that Trump is making. People are going to have a reaction, and they are having it. A lot of people in the streets that really don't understand. Now, that being said, being patient with people with their reaction, not making fun of them, not making them feel stupid, just kind of backing off a little bit and letting them have their reaction does not include, unfortunately, their reaction when they become aware that what they've been doing all along that they know is wrong. If not, it wouldn't have been hidden in darkness. Um, the reaction to being found out is basically what the Mayans talked about. And I'm going to repeat it again. The Mayans said that at the end of end times, which is where we're at now, we're right before hitting the golden age, the city of gold they talk about in the Bible, that the issue was going to be that people's sub personalities were going to come up within themselves, and that this is what would cause a collapse of society because people wouldn't be able to tolerate their own darkness that they had to now look at. I'm assuming that this has to do with the fact that we're in the apocalypse, which means to reveal We're in Revelations. We certainly now have the capacity and the ability and the desire in this country to shed light on everything, so everybody knows exactly what it is that's going on. And then in the shedding of the light, so much has been found that is really shocking, the level of deceit and hypocrisy that could have taken and absolutely would have taken this country to a state of collapse. So we have to allow people their emotional response, because not responding emotionally and simply swallowing the response is what makes people sick. So it'll make an entire society sick, which maybe is what has happened to society, that we've been sick. So many people knowing that things are not right. Okay. That does not take care of the people that did behave poorly, and now the evidence is there. But there's so many people that were good people. I could feel it instinctively from years ago. And somehow they got caught up. Now, they have that little trick called the honeypot, to where, oh, am I familiar with that or what? To where you set up a man by parading females in front of him and that he's not supposed to be with, etc. And then they are able to take care of the man. Well, apparently they do that having to do with money. Like, hey, how would you like this? And that's the way you go from earning 150,000 a year to having $39 million in your bank account. I'm not exactly sure what it is that needs to happen, but I think we have to take into consideration that the Mayans, that were the only civilization in the history of the planet that transitioned successfully, went into the other dimensions to where they finished their job on planet Earth. They went successfully, peacefully. It's the biggest question mark in archaeology. What happened to the Mayans? They shifted. They did it gracefully. They were the only people that did it gracefully. The Egyptians, they got taken down. All the other civilizations, the destruction, not the Mayans. They're still trying to prove that they were taken down by floods, by drought. And then they go and they investigate and they come back and they said there was no flood, there was no drought. We don't know why. From one day to the next, everything just ended. It ended because they gracefully went into the other dimensions. Okay, great. So they're the only people that were able to do that. And here we are again, right on the precipice of a transition into a new era that all the other civilizations, other than the Mayans, did not do effectively. So the Mayans did. So maybe we should pay attention to them. And what we need to pay attention to is the Tortuguero prophecy, where they say that at the end, it is going to be people's darkness coming up and being revealed that's going to cause the chaos. Well, I think that that is what's happening now. To what extent the chaos? I think that we're going to have to do visualizations and mantras to be able to reduce that chaos. And again, what the Mayans said was the people seeing their own darkness, not the other people seeing their darkness, but the darkness coming up within all of us. So we're going to have to be very aware of the fact that it's not a question of just winning. It's making sure that the win does not take us down as a country, because too many people can't handle what had to happen for that win to happen. And that's where we are today. My feeling has been since the 90s, when I was in the only group in the country, group therapy for 4 mind control victims. We were 4 females. And I believe in retrospect that group was set up for me, for the government to be able to watch it and to see what was going to happen if mind control victims started to talk. But whatever reason it was set up, we were told that Clinton was going to declassify the mind control programs, and that we would probably get compensated. And we were very happy about that. It was very nice. Everybody liked Clinton, blah, 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 blah. And then the interesting incident with Lewinsky. I mean, if you're somebody like me, you go, that was so obviously a setup. That little girlfriend, oh, save that dress, so obviously military. And then we have all this other information that appears to be coming out. And then we have this woman, um, the one they call Pocahontas. And I think that this was a decent woman. What happened? You can say, oh, the lure of money. I don't think it was just that. I really don't. My instincts are telling me that wasn't what it was. My instincts are telling me that wasn't it, what happened, in my opinion, to the Clintons. I believe there's a level of mind control going on that's much wider and deeper and damaging than we're aware. So, why is this important? For me to be right? No. If you don't address causal, what's causing an issue, you're not going to work on taking care of it. You're just going to run around taking care of the symptoms. And that's what worries me. How did all of these nice people get so caught up in this? I think that needs to be looked into. And it needs to be beyond they sold their soul for dollars. Okay? I think it's bigger than that. Um, Atlantis was a civilization that existed. If not, Plato would not have started to write that book called Timaeus that was on Atlantis. He didn't finish it because he died. Okay. What happened in Atlantis? Because that was a civilization that didn't make it. They didn't make the transition gracefully. They did not make the transition. We want the transition to be graceful. What do we need to learn from Atlantis? Because we're right there now. We're right there. Atlantis had temples, and each of the temples was very proud of all the discoveries that they were making. And I believe, from what I can see, it was mainly technological. And so they reached these incredible levels in terms of technology, but their ethics was not at the same level. So the technology was very high, and the ethics was not high at all. So they were developing things that weren't good for humans. And Atlantis went under because the direction they were on, the planet would have exploded. I think that we're there again today, having to do with technology. Who is in charge of ensuring that the technology, that the research has been done enough that we know that the technology is not going to harm, or what needs to happen for that technology to be able to be used and any side effects to be, the word is mitigated. They use that, I believe, in insurance, and that's not happening. In terms of Congress, there needs to be ethics that are in the light and that are followed, and there needs to be systems in place that there obviously are not in place, or the bad guys are in charge of the systems. I believe that Congress has been hit with uh, with mind control issues. And I believe that when you have mind control issues, you can basically turn anybody, because the big thing that they do in mind control is to figure out what makes a human being react. One of the first things they do, which I don't think that they did with the people in Congress, is to kill your instincts of survival. That self-preservation, they kill it. And they go through a lot of, they must have done a lot of thinking to figure this out, but they are able to kill it. They also have a programming to make you incredibly loyal to your handler, to where it's like your heart would break if anything would happen to your handler. Oh my God. And it's a programming. It's just a programming. And I think that Schiff needs to be looked into, his circle of friends, and where he spent his time, where he went to school, where he went to university, because there is a thread, or several threads, that if you follow them, the people that follow those threads basically are people that you should pay attention to, because if you're not careful, they're going to take you down. I think that And so now I'm going to stop talking about that because it's really not to my advantage. But we are in an incredible place right now of truth and revelations. This country is going to be operating with truth. And of course, there's certain things that we're not going to all like. It's not possible. First place, we can't be robotic. Trump, we can't be robotic. We can't love everything you like, because if we do that, then it's just like the old system. So you got to get used to Trump. Somebody saying Gulf of Mexico and not having it make you crazy. Okay? There has to be a little bit of movement and flexibility. People are human. We need our reaction time. We need to get used to things, and we need to feel like we can actually, that we're allowed to think. That's really important. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead, and the thing with the mind control that I'm contending is that they have the most adorable videos. And I think it's, give me a second. I think it's like 19 different people today put out a video about Trump's speech tonight. They use exactly the same talking points. Exactly the same. That's pretty robotic. Those people, I know the original one, it was like 4 people, and I think the last one I saw was like 19 people, the same talking points exactly. How do they get all those people to sit there and repeat exactly the same thing? Because all of those people are pretty bright. To me, it smells of mind control. It smells of threats and mind control. I mean, you can't get 19 people to choose. They're all going to have different angles. I believe that you should pay attention to that. Whoever it is that's paying attention to all of this, you need to pay attention to that. That is not normal. It is beyond weird. And I think people are getting that feeling. Oh my God, what happened to the Democrats? What happened to them is maybe they've all been mind control victims, which means you need to get this mind control issues front and center, having to do with everything. It's completely crazy. Anyway, I did the map. It's interesting, of the United States. And tonight we have Trump talking at 9, and he's living in his world is always really exciting. Who knows? Okay. We have a lot of rage and frustration. The whole California down there, we know something needs to happen there, because we're going to have a major catastrophe that's not going to be handleable, if that word exists. And then the whole Canada thing, we know there is a big confrontation having to do with tariffs, whatever. We have in the Northeast, where I had put yesterday that there was negotiating with ETs. Not a good thing to have people that are not the government negotiating with ETs for the government, negotiating with ETs, and a lot of black magic. Today, what we have is a lot of fear and depression. So Trump is obviously winning. This is good. The country is full of fear. Now, those people that did those identical videos with the identical talking points have got to be full of fear. You don't want a whole country full of fear. That's not strength. That breaks safety nets that countries have. We do have the talisman of David, which means the Star of David is a talisman. It's protection. If your energy field has the 2 triangles aligned in the heart center, it's an incredible form of protection. Okay, we've got that, so we're fine. We've got the pyramids in the Gulf of America. They're great. Mexico is doing great. Darn. Florida is doing great. All of Texas is doing really good. New York, Washington doing great. But we've got fear. So what we're going to do today when we do the mantras, we're going to ice down where Trump is speaking, and outside of where he's speaking, the angry people. Anger is a lot more destructive, having to do with order in the other dimensions. Fear immobilizes you and you just can't, you don't function. You don't want a population full of fear because they won't move. You have to tell them what to do. And there's no initiative, there's no whatever. So this is better than the rage. Um, but I still think that we should make sure that we put out whatever excess fire there is wherever it is that Trump is going to be speaking and outside of where it is that he's going to be speaking. Um, I think that in terms of written human history, that we have already hit and passed the point of the strongest point of hitting up against each other, of light, dark, male, female. And after that, you get a coming together. You, the name of the heart center means the place where there is no sound, which means there's no hitting up, things are not hitting up against each other. I think we're inches away from achieving that. You need to remember that there are a lot of entities on this planet and off planet that don't want for this to be graceful. They don't want for this to happen. So I'm going to tell you something that I have read in too many places and heard too many times for there not to be at least some truth to it. There seems to be an issue having to do with planet Earth, of us being so important in the galaxy that how we handle this particular time in history will make a huge difference for a ton of other planets. It's like a make or break situation. And when the first 15 times I heard that, I thought, oh, they're just trying to, these are people from planet Earth trying to make themselves very important. I've heard it too many times. So I'm only sharing it um, as a piece of information that may or may not be accurate. But it would certainly explain why we're getting so much attention from the Galactic Federation, who put one of their spaceships right on top of the United States, on top of Mexico, on top of Venezuela, and probably a gazillion other places. They would only be doing that in places where that are aligned with the energy that makes for stability today, which is truth. And maybe in saying that, maybe we're going to be able to make this transition relatively graceful. I'm not exactly sure why I'm hesitating, but can you see how the light keeps changing? There's something, I don't think it's something I'm not saying. Maybe I'm afraid of being so hopeful. Not quite sure. But anyway, so we are in a really interesting place. And what the Mayans said is exactly what's happening. Um, the dark side of people is now getting revealed, and that becomes the issue. The issue is not all that money they stole. The issue is the people that stole that money as they were presenting themselves as good people working for this country. If the issue was just the money, let's get the money back. Okay, business as usual. It's never going to be business as usual again. Everything is going to change. Also, we have a pattern developing here that needs to be addressed. That pattern is people turning on Elon Musk. And there we go again. And I guess I need to find a name for this particular dynamic. Just like in Atlantis, technology was up here and ethics was down here. And that gap is where the bad spirits play. That's how they can get things to go south and things to not work. And just you can take an example for yourself. If you have a friend and you're very wealthy and your friend is not wealthy at all, you can have a relationship with that person, but there's a lot of times in which you have to stop yourself, remind yourself, they're not going to be able to afford that vacation or that meal or that restaurant or whatever. That's the gap between what you have and what that person has. And that is a gap where the spirits come in and start to, in Spanish, the word is pinchar. They start to poke and pinch and make people think things. That gap was in technology and ethics in Atlantis, and with friends. Like if you, I had a boyfriend once that was a relatively new immigrant. He was here legally. This was years ago, and he was not well-to-do. And it was constantly a struggle because of the fact that there was this big gap having to do with economics. So we have a huge gap now having to do with Elon Musk being a billionaire and him touching situations that have to do with money for people that are very frustrated and they want to take out their frustration someplace. And the fact that he is so much more than they are, there you go with that gap. That's where there is a huge issue today of rage and anger. And the rage and anger is not even allowing them to see the reality of the situation, that he's saving money for everybody, because that's not really their point. Their point is that they're frustrated. But so how do you deal with that? I think that Elon needs to finish with this thing, and I think he needs to go back to doing business, because doing business for Elon Musk is really pulling society gracefully and ethically forward, having to do with technology. We are in the age of Aquarius, which means we're going to get into these incredible technological developments. Why on earth would we want somebody different from him there, regardless of the people that resent him with the money and everything? So how do you deal with that? You deal with it with a mantra. In the first place, get an object. Like, this is Elon. Hate, 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 hate. A lot of love, too, a lot of respect. But the hate, the anger, what did I tell you? Anger is more damaging. Basically, his aura is getting filled up. Okay, well, he can't let his aura get filled up with that. And he shouldn't change what he's doing now. He's doing exactly what he needs to be doing, what he wants to do, and what we need for him to do now. But a good mantra will start. It's not a question of protecting against that. It's a question of your house. You sweep it, and you or somebody sweeps it and mops it. You wash your clothes. You're cleaning stuff because it gets dirty. It accumulates. It's an accumulation of a lot of hatred. And I remember years ago, all of a sudden, I have had a week back, and I remember my back would hurt terribly. I said, what on earth is going on? And one day I decided to sketch it, and it was actually one of my relatives that was very angry at me. And that, they call it evil eye. I don't think this person was trying to evil eye me, but her anger and her focus in me, because of we were competing on something and I was winning, that was hitting my back. He's going to get sick if something is not done to start to clean out people's reaction to what's going on and then needing to turn on someone. So we will get into that later. Let's go ahead. Again, my bottom line is that I think that we have already passed the point of maximum hitting up against of light and dark, which is good. But then we hit the point the Mayans talked about, where everybody has to deal with themselves. And that those subpersonalities kicks in the whole self-esteem and the shame issue. And please remember that shame is the lowest vibration of all of the emotions. And it takes everything down. So we're going to have a country, or certainly a Congress, full of a lot of people that are ashamed. Talk about lame duck. Anyway, so let's go ahead and do a mantra having to do with give me a second. I'm looking at I'm looking at you know what? It is shame. I'm looking at the people that are watching the speech, the people that have to be there. Probably half of them don't want to be there. And that's one of my hand went like this, and I'm looking at them, and they're looking at Trump in anger, but underneath that anger is shame. Shame makes people draw in their mind strings. They become less. They become unprotected. They become less. And that's the whole thing that the Mayan said, that people's subpersonalities would come up. And I'm not exactly sure how to handle that other than let's go ahead and do the shame mantra and let us do it surrogate for the people that have been found out. Because I suspect that something is going on here having to do with mind control. And I suspect that a lot of the people would not have done what they did. And it's not me being a goody two shoes. It just doesn't, it's like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. Those 6 people or 16 people that did exactly the same talking points, exactly in the same sequence, there was no creativity. There's something the matter with that. And I think that it is mind control. Certainly is fear, but it's mind control. They're not, they're operating robotically. And I believe that when it comes to being a mind control victim, and so anybody out there that listens to me that's a mind control victim, the emotion you have to deal with is shame. That's the emotion you have to deal with because that's the one that's going to take you down. For people to find out everything that you went through, for people to find out everything you had to do because you were a mind control victim and a robot, who wants that? Oh my God, no. You need to take care of that first. And I think that is what we're going to need to take care of now. So we're going to go ahead and do the shame mantra. And we're going to do the video that has the caves, which means earth element, which grounds people, which in the Lord's Prayer it says you have to be grounded. It doesn't say deliver us from evil. It says help us to be in the present. So we're going to do that and we're going to do the shame mantra. Here's the interesting thing. We're going to do it for the people that are coming up against Trump, against Elon, many of whom will be there because I think it's in Congress. And it should reduce their negative reactions and it should reduce the aggressiveness that the Mayans were talking about. Okay? So the mantra is a purification mantra, and it is, even though we are ashamed, we should have suspected mind control before. It didn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. These people are not that, and I'm going to use the word, these people are not that stupid. It doesn't make any sense other than mind control. It's not greed. Obviously there must have been some greed, but okay, so we're going to do 7 minutes of this, okay? And let's get that mantra with the caves and the cavern. Here we go. You visualize yourself as if you were flying or invisible over the crowds of people where Trump is going to be making his speech, and outside. And if you see red, then you visualize the people inside igloos, which is ice, which cools down the fire of the red, which is anger, or you visualize cascading cold water over them. So don't just do the mantra, which you repeat in silence. You don't move your mouth with the words, even though we are ashamed. I love and accept myself. And then you go visit in the astral dimensions in the future, because it's at 9 and right now it's 7:30. You visit that scene, which I believe is in Congress, and you do the mantra and the visualization. At the same time, you're looking at the video and you're kind of transferring the energy of the earth element to ground and land this event that's happening tonight, but that is representative of what is going on. Now go ahead and visualize angels and dolphins swimming and flying in the room where Trump is going to be speaking and the people that are going to be outside, probably protesting or whatever. That will transfer the energy of dolphins, which is community and happy and love, and angels, which is obviously heart and getting along, no war. So you're going to, those two energies, you're going to send in there. Continue. And let's all pitch in to make this a positive day in an era in which we are getting aligned with the truth. Unfortunately, the lies that we've been living have been exposed, and that's very painful. Okay. So now I would like for you, if you watch Trump's speech tonight, um, if you see things happening, if there is an event, um, I want you to visualize you putting ice over it, cascading water from a glacier, rolling over wherever that event is, uh, within or right outside of the venue where Trump will be speaking. If it feels very uncomfortable and you can feel there's a bad reaction and you would like for Trump to be supported in what he's doing, then visualize dolphins swimming amongst the people, which will transfer to them the energy of community and love and flow and wanting to play together rather than fight. What I see in terms of are things that are like somebody with something like maybe I don't actually think it's a bomb, but something kind of like that explodes a little bit, um, like where an usher would stand when the people are coming into an event, where the usher would stand outside the door. I'm not even sure it's going to happen. But let's say there's an incident that involves any kind of an explosion. You don't need to know information. All you need to know is explosion is fire. That means there's too much fire. Somebody's frustrated. Somebody's hateful. You just visualize wherever it is, and you don't need to know where it is. You just visualize ice on top of that person, an igloo on top of the whole situation, including icing down the Capitol Police that have to try to create order and somebody's trying to do something to create disorder. Um, I don't know why remember that guy that sounded the fire alarm and interrupted some session that was like really important. And then he said he thought it was, I don't know what. And it was pretty obvious that it was sabotage. Stuff like that can happen. But if you see it, if you hear it, if you sense it, the person that's doing that is going outside of their comfort zone because they're angry. And so just go ahead and ice the whole thing down. What does that mean? You're reducing the fire element. Fire element is very interesting. We are in global warming. There's too much fire. And I'm not going to go get into the climate change thing because I'm not talking about that. The shamans doesn't talk about that. Chinese medicine doesn't talk about that. And neither does Ayurveda. They talk about the elements and how for you to be healthy, the elements need to be balanced. For the planet to be healthy, the elements need to be balanced. For your company to be healthy, the elements need to be balanced. We have too much fire. We already know that. It's all the technology that's radiating electricity and microwave, which is fire. So learning how to reduce fire basically means that you're going to be learning how to control human behavior, but not in an unethical way. Very important to be ethical. If not, you become part of the problem. You cannot have an argument unless you have too much fire. You can't have insomnia unless you have too much fire. When did all of us start having problems sleeping? 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when the fire element technology was going up, people were on their cell phones all day long. They were sleeping with their cell phones, sleeping with a laptop, even on top of their body or right next to it, their router underneath their bed to make sure they have a good enough connection. Well, that's fire. And then all of a sudden, people weren't sleeping. Well, if you have too much fire, you get a little bit antsy. And when it's time to go to sleep, you're still a little bit antsy. It's due to too much fire. It's exactly the time in which, and I'm not just extrapolating, it's a direct connection. You can't be angry unless there's too much fire. If somebody's in a rage and you pour a bucket of cold water on them, the rage stops because water puts out fire. So does earth put out fire. But I'm not suggesting that we create an earthquake in Congress tonight. We don't need to do that. Even in the other dimensions, we can just use cold water to put out the fire because a lot of people there are going to be angry. And again, we need to allow people their reactions, but only to a certain extent. And there's stuff that we can do. So, what I'm teaching you here, you should try at home. When you see your kids arguing, just step back and visualize that they're in an igloo arguing. And you will notice immediately that the arguing diminishes because you changed the balance of the elements. There's no longer too much fire. If they don't have that extra fire, they cannot fight. So play with this when you're in the streets. If you see people that are cranky or somebody that's trying to irritate everybody because whatever they have going on, which is an excess fire, but whatever real life problems they have, just visualize them in an igloo, visualize a piece of ice on top of them, visualize a piece of ice inside of their head, and watch within seconds almost their behavior changes. The issue of the elements is everything. That's how reality is created by the mind, intention, and then it works with the elements. If the elements are out of balance, everything is a mess, which is where we're at today. But you can start to play with it. You can learn how to work with things that are difficult. By the way, I've never tried that cooling down with well, that's not true. In the Mantrista movement, most of us sleep with our Mantrista videos on, and most of them are full of water. The images, water, waterfalls, cascades, um, underneath with the dolphins swimming, and water puts out fire. So interesting that I've never tried to connect the dots in terms of the effect of one of those videos on somebody that has insomnia. But if you have insomnia, why don't you try it? But don't put the video on right when you go to sleep. Have it on all day long and then go to sleep with it on also. And I think you'll find a big difference. But tonight, if you're going to watch the event, practice tonight. Help history. And also help the people that are behaving poorly, because if they didn't have an excess of the fire element, they wouldn't be behaving poorly. That's the trick. They wouldn't be behaving poorly. Now, what is the food of the devil? Fire. So when there's too much fire, everybody can end up with behavior that they wouldn't normally have. So practice up with this. You don't need the video, you just need your head. And you need to visualize. And you can say, well, I don't know how to visualize. Yes, you do. You invent the images in your head, even if you cannot see the images, which was my case for 40 years. Even if you cannot see inside your head those images, you just pretend that you're seeing them. That's how healings are done. That's how reality is created. So go ahead and practice up and kind of let us know. I think you might find it very interesting. So I was trying to find the link for you to see on X where 4, 6, 16 people said exactly the same thing, and all of them looked like they were doing a TikTok video. They all chose the same format, and it was obviously per instructions, but too systematic. It's got to be mind control going on there. And that happened before Revelations. I think we're talking about a country that's been controlled by mind control. So we have to get it figured out. Anyway, thank you for joining me. And let's enjoy Trump's speech tonight, because I have to assume that if you're watching me, you obviously know how I feel. And if you hate Trump or what he's doing, or you hate Elon, you're not going to be here. And that's fine. It's everybody. It's not possible for me to hide this, nor is it necessary for me to hide. As I told the Mantrista movement people, I said, I have no reason to hide the way I feel about things. It doesn't mean that you need to feel the same thing. I was actually talking about the book that I'm putting out that I hope will have finished by the end of the week, called Sex. We got to get this figured out. Where there's stuff in there that's like, okay, this is interesting. And like I told him, you don't need to believe any of this. Don't read the book, or read it and go, I don't like that. Fine. I can have my opinions, my emotions, what I believe, or what I want to present, and you can have something different. It's okay. And if you don't have extra fire, then you can accept that the other person doesn't agree with you. If you have extra fire, then you want to kill them because they're so stupid. What can I tell you? Okay. Thank you for joining me. Bye.